Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Tamlolo Drumbi. In this episode, I'll just be speaking briefly about how language models work, how those AI actually understand words, right? So, they are everywhere. Language models, AI, ChatGPT, I'm sure you've heard these words everywhere. But have you ever really wondered what's happening under the hood? How do these models know what to say next? And sometimes, why do they get things hilariously wrong? Why do they give you certain responses that you just can't, you have to just laugh about it? And why is it that, when you go on ChatGPT, you see this small text under it that says, you know, they try to double check response or something around that line? It's because AI it can be perfect because an AI is not human. It makes predictions, right? It doesn't think like a human. That's why you know, those are usually disclaimers are usually out there for you to make sure that you're using it responsibly, right? So in this video, I'll be shedding some light on how they work, how they understand words, and the likes, right? So let's get into it. So, whether you realize it or not, you're already using language models all the time. So for example, think about the time where you're texting a friend and your phone suggests the next word, or when you ask chatbot a question, or when you're trying to send an email and then you get some, auto completion suggestions from the email clients, right? So all of these are just they are all language models trying to predict what word will come next in the sentence. So what exactly is a language model? Um, at its core, a language model is just a system that predicts the next word based on the previous words, right? So, for example, if I say something like "I'm going today," what do you think is going to come next? Right. So, if you say store, then you're right because looking at this graphic, store has 80%, park has 65%, lion has 5%. So, the way models work or AI works is that it picks the word that has the highest probability, which is 80% in this case. So pick the word store and suggest that to you. So that's when you get store as a suggestion where you're typing the word, I am going to the, right? So the model doesn't think like humans, it just calculates probabilities, because the store is 80%, then it's most likely to be the next word I just suggest to you. So AI does not read words the way we do, it just turns them into numbers, right? So when you're typing, it just gets converted into a set of numerical values. Then the model uses these numbers to predict the most likely word that comes next. Like, for example, in the previous example, 80% was like the one that has the highest score. So it's just going to predict that to you. So the model doesn't really need to read the entire word. It just picks this entire word, looks into its dictionary, its knowledge base, and looks at which word comes next mostly within its dictionary. So, like for example, in this case, I am going to the store has appeared a lot in the dictionary more than I am going to the lion, right? So that's why the model will most likely predict the word store to you, right? So, and once it has a prediction, the only thing it does do is it converts those numbers back into the words, and then to you it looks like magic, but it's all just probability in action. But there's a problem, and the problem is that a model cannot predict words that it has never seen before. So every model is trained on a specific set of text, which we call the corpus, right? So this could be Wikipedia, it could be novels, it could be chat rooms, whatever the creators decide to use, right? So, and that's why you see that some models are better at formal writing, while others sound more casual, right? It's because of the quality of data on which it has been trained on. And sometimes you see that some models excel at coding, while others don't. Is because those models have been trained on a massive set of like codes and all that. So that's pretty much how what a corpus means. So it's what the model is trained on. So if a word isn't in the model's training data, it's not in the corpus, right? The model has no clue what it has to do with it when you ask it a word that it doesn't know about. So it's not able to make a prediction about it at all. And that's why when you ask the model for certain things, it tries to use something similar, something close to the word you're provided it with, and then it gives you nonsense sometimes, right? So that's just what happens. If a model doesn't know or hasn't come across a word before, it is not able to make a prediction about it. Therefore, it's not able to give you any response would make sense, right? If that makes sense. So now let's break this down a bit further, right? So if I'm typing the word I'm making a cup of, looking at this graphic again, the T comes more like T has 70%, of course, it's more likely to be suggested to you. So, based on training data, a model might say T because of the 70% apparently. And the next thing might say will be, so let's say there was coffee here with 20% in. So if it doesn't say tea, the most likely thing it will say next is 20 is coffee, sorry, which has 20%. And the least likely thing it's going to send back to you is trouble because trouble is just 10%. Now, if you've been thinking about mischief all day and you've been typing mischief, I mean, typing trouble, you know, all day, then there's a higher chance that the word might suggest trouble to you because the more you type trouble, the more trouble moves up the ranks, right? So if eventually trouble has more percentage than C, then of course, when you type the word I'm making a cup of, it's most likely to predict the word trouble back to you. So that's just the way it works, not rocket science, right? Cool. So now let's make some comparison. Let's look at the different kinds of models. So we have two kinds of models. We have the small models and we have the large ones. Not all models are created equally anyways, right? So some are just small. They are trained on a small specific data, for example, email replies or poetry. So, those suggestions you get when you're trying to compose an email or replying to emails, they use models that have been trained specifically on email replies, conversations around emails and all. And then also when, for example, if you have a model that is trained specifically to write poems, then they might be trained on poetry, right? So those are small models. Then we have the likes of ChatGPT that are trained on huge data sets, which includes books, articles, and conversations, right? So these ones have like a larger data. And of course, would expect that the bigger the models are, the better their predictions will be because most likely they've come across a lot of words. So there's a very high chance that no word would come like strange to them. No word would be very strange. However, it also means that the models have more complexity, to them. They have more power, and sometimes they even spill up more nonsense, right? They have more nonsense in their training data. So, right. So the higher the more, I mean, the larger the training data, the more complex, the bigger the model, right? So let's move forward. Now I believe one of the simplest models you've probably used is predictive testing emails, right? So for example, let's say you type in something like looking forward to, your email will just suggest something like meeting you or seeing you soon. That's because in most email replies or even most sentences, or when you're composing something in your chat or something like that, most times you type something like looking forward to seeing you or looking forward to meeting you. Hardly will you say looking forward to some other random word I can't actually think of right now. So those are the words that usually come after looking forward to, and it only makes sense that that's what the model will suggest back to you because it has seen that a lot of times, right? So it is not because the model understands what you're trying to say, it just knows that those words come together more often, right, in emails, right? So that's just a very basic example that I'm sure we can relate with. Now, things get funny here when the word isn't in the corpus, right? You've said earlier on that when the word is not in the corpus, then the model is not able to really give you a reasonable response. So if a model hasn't seen the word before, it cannot predict it. So if a word is new to the model, it's not able to predict it. So what do you think happens when I think I mentioned earlier on that, for example, if you type a word like maybe bluff, right, in its stuff and the model has not seen it before, it has no idea what to do. So there are two things the model will try to do. It will either ignore it or it will try to predict based on similar looking words. So that's why sometimes your AI generated text can often sound a bit off. It's because, it's trying to make predictions around words that it has not come across before. Right. So this is looks like a summary of everything. By now, I know that you have a basic understanding of how language models work. So in this video, you know we've learned how the models predict words based on probabilities, right? So models do not think like humans. Models cannot read words. All they do is just predict words based on probabilities, and they also learn from a corpus, which is the set of tests, the set of training data, right? And we also mentioned that the how good a model is in a particular area depends on the corpus, depends on what it was actually training with, so trained with. So yeah, that's what happens there. And also we come to understand that models don't understand words. All they do is just for them to turn text into numbers, and then once they have turn text into numbers, when they have the numbers, the highest numbers, they convert it back to words, and that's what they feed back to you. So it's all that simple, right? So that's the end of today's episode. If you found this useful, it's just the beginning. Apparently, it's just like the tip of the iceberg. There's more I have in the series. We're going to really deep dive further into how LLM works, right? Right. So in the next episode, we're pretty much going to um, you know, look at how AI models predict the next word. We're going to consider something called the Ngram models, right? So it's the most basic form of language models that we can, just for us to see how they make predictions, how they look at their corpus, and then try to form things together and all that. So we're going to, take it forward little by little so that it doesn't sound too complicated. If you enjoyed this one, give it a like and subscribe so that you can get a notification when I release the next one. Bye.